Happy Friday and happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, life coach, trauma healer, and writer. Today is the first Friday of September 2019, and today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is Codependence is a Drug and Life is Now. So when I say codependence is a drug, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. It's been thought of as and said to be an addictive behavioral pattern by many people, many times over many years. And my goal in my trauma healing is to move people from this addictive behavior into codependent sobriety. And I think it's important to look at, when we're looking at codependence as a drug, what are we getting out of it? Because we take substances in order to get something out of it. We take substances in order to numb, in order to distract, in order to have some illusion of comfort, in order to really not have to feel our feelings, right? The feelings are so overwhelming. We don't have the capacity to feel those feelings and incorporate them into our lives, so we numb them, we push them aside, we avoid them in some way by a substance. And one of those substances, it's a behavioral substance, it's a relational substance, which is codependence. And what happens when we get hooked into codependent behavior, we get hooked into another person, we get hooked into needing their approval, proving ourselves, wanting them to want us, people pleasing, is because we actually can't sit with the feelings that we're actually feeling. So we point to the other person and manipulate the situation in hopes that the person we're talking to, the person that we're relating with, will give us what we need, the attention that we need, in order to not feel what we're actually feeling. And then oftentimes what we are actually feeling can occur as if it's caused by the other person. Like how I'm feeling depends on what you're doing and what you're saying. My experience depends on your experience. And not only does my experience depend on your experience, my experience oftentimes also depends on how I'm interpreting your experience, which is oftentimes not accurate to your experience. So that's why oftentimes a lot of arguments are like, that's actually not what I said, you're not hearing me, that's not what I said, you're not hearing me, no, you're not hearing me, no, you're not hearing me, is because we are not listening to the person, we're listening to what we are interpreting, what they're saying, how we're interpreting their tone of voice and their body language, and then what they're saying in the way that they say it brings up a million times in the past where they said that same thing in the same way and we interpreted it this way. And so there are layers of trauma coming into a conversation that blinds us from actually hearing what's being said in the moment. And additionally, those layers aren't just blinding us from hearing what's going on, they're blinding us from feeling. And that's where I think the notion of codependence as a drug comes in. Because we get hooked into codependent behavior, and one of the reasons is because we are feeling so much, we can't feel it. Number one, we have to blame what we're feeling on you. We have to people please and manipulate and be of service and exhaust ourselves into a relationship so that we don't actually have to sit and feel what we're feeling, so that we can feel other things, feelings of exhaustion, feeling of blame, feelings of just being overly of service, and blame all of those feelings on the circumstance, which could potentially be the circumstance's fault, but we gave ourselves to that circumstance so that we don't have to actually sit in how we're feeling, which could be abandonment, which could be embarrassment, which could be sadness or a desire, like, hey, I just want to be hugged right now, or I just want to be held right now. I'm feeling confused, I'm feeling disengaged, I'm feeling not taken care of. And those are all the things that one would say as a child if they didn't have to set those feelings aside, ignore them, and then just manage the situation with their narcissistic parent or guardian or alcoholic parent, or just there's many different types of parents that for one reason or another just didn't validate our experience, where we didn't actually have the space to say, I don't like this. I don't like how this is feeling. I don't like how this is going. I don't understand how this is going. Can you just hug me? Can you just hold me? Can I actually just walk away from this situation right now? And that's just not just from some sort of dysfunctional construct with parents, but in any sort of abusive or traumatic event or series of events where we are not actually able to say what we're truly feeling. We set those aside and we get hooked into the circumstance. And that's what happens in codependent relationships. We set aside how we're actually feeling and we just get hooked into the circumstance. And that is the drug that takes us away and removes us and has us deny and not feel and fully experience what we're actually feeling, like drugs do. When we take drugs, we give our experience to the drug, and then we are overwhelmed with the feeling of feeling high from the drug, whether that's good, bad, or ugly. We set aside how we're actually feeling because we can't deal with it, we can't notice it, we can't focus on it, we can't manage it. So let me have another feeling. High, drunk, disoriented, connected to some other power that's going to give me a feeling that is potentially, maybe, way more enjoyable than the feeling that I'm feeling now. And even if it's not enjoyable, it'll numb me out on some level so I don't actually have to feel what I'm feeling. Same as codependence. And it's the same as why a lot of us get addicted into these codependent relationships. Oh, here's another codependent relationship. Oh, here's another codependent relationship. Here's another codependent relationship. 10, 15, 20 years go by, and you actually haven't felt any of your actual emotions. The only feelings that you've actually felt and that you can remember are feelings that were triggered by or caused by the relationship with another person, as opposed to the relationship with yourself. And that's why we can get, people say all the time, they talk about getting lost in another person. It's the same thing as getting lost in drugs, lost in another person. Years and years and years and years go by, and I have clients who are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, and they're like, I actually don't even know who I am. Because their identity has been lost in another person. It had no location inside of a relationship. Their self was set aside, and they identified their identity was constantly being validated the more and more they were in service and people pleased and exhausted themselves to be in service of a relationship plus the other person, right? So there's the construct of the relationship that you just want to keep going and you want to keep perpetuating and you don't want it to break. So there's the construct of the relationship, and then there's the other person that you're also in service of. So oftentimes when you're in service to the relationship, you're playing the role that you think you need to play in order to have the construct of that relationship perpetuate its life. And so you're setting yourself aside to play the role, the particular puzzle piece that you think that you need to play in order to keep this this construct, this game, this relationship going. And then you have the other person on top of that. The relationship has desires, and you have the other person you're with who has particular desires that you're constantly role playing in order to be the person who would fulfill those desires. So you're playing all of these roles instead of the role of yourself. And the roles are numbing you. They're numbing you away from yourself. They're distracting you from yourself. They're disassociating you from yourself. And then oftentimes when people come to me, they got to a point in their life where they're like, I don't know who I am. I'm done. I'm done playing all of these roles. I'm done being addicted to other people. And I want to start being addicted to myself, which is the best drug to actually be addicted to focus on. It's the most healthy drug is to people please yourself. and want to prove something to yourself and want to be wanted by yourself and need to be needed by yourself. And I'm not talking about some extreme narcissistic quality, because that isn't a healthy service to oneself. I'm talking about a healthy service to oneself, to one's feelings, to one's existence, to one's dreams. And that's also why I'm saying, I've sort of subtitled this Life is Now. Life is now. You know, when you're addicted to codependence, like I said, decades go by and you're like, where am I? Who am I? When you're addicted to codependence, life isn't now. Life is in the future, the illusory, phantasmical future that you are trying to create with this person. You're constantly in service of, but this is how it's going to go, and this is how it should go. So I'll just keep contorting myself for this fantasy future that's might possibly, probably, potentially going to come. If I keep contorting myself, then this whole thing is going to shift into where and how we think it should be, or how I think it should go, or how I deserve that it should go. I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to work my fingers to the grind. I'm going to forget myself. And then eventually we'll all be happy and free. And that is not life is now. That is life is someday, one day. And I got intimately related with life is now today, because I was in a training course for the past few days. I came out of the training course, and my brother called me and told me that my mother had gone in. I'm sorry about that siren. I live close to a firehouse. But my brother called me today and said that my mother went into the hospital and got some stents put into her heart. And that was... she's fine. Apparently she's fine. Apparently it's a very routine procedure. But it scared the crap out of me, and I didn't expect it. And, my mom was in the hospital having a procedure done, and I didn't know about it. She lives in New York, and I was just out here in California doing my thing, and I had no idea what she was going through. And it wasn't predicted. It wasn't like she's been having heart trouble. So it's really surprising, extremely shocking, and life is now. And if you don't take on your codependence, then I think that you'll have a hard time really experiencing the now and actually creating like a real future, not some future designed by thinking eventually someday you're going to be safe if you work real hard at it with this person. And that is a trauma response from childhood, right? Like, I'm a kid, something really twisted is happening, and I'm just going to keep being the good kid. I'm going to keep being really good, and I'm going to ignore how I feel, and eventually someday maybe I'll be safe. This constant search and contorting for that safety zone that we actually truly deserve when we're children, that a lot of us won't find. So it's just like this consistent addiction to longing for and trying to create safety. And that is part of the codependence addiction. Like, I'll handle this, I'll handle the whole relationship, and I'll just keep forgetting about myself inside of this made-up journey towards safety someday, one day. Which usually ends in divorce, which usually ends in heartbreak, which usually ends in some sort of relational disaster. Not to say there's no heartbreak in healthy relationships as well. There's always heartbreak. And heartbreak can be something fairly lovingly navigated when it's a healthy situation. I think that's it. go ahead and tell me your thoughts about codependence as a drug. If there's something in that that you relate to. And I have a little bit of a request, a little bit of an assignment. Oh, by the way, I don't have lips. This isn't a kiss mark. I burnt myself with the curling iron. I've had a lot of people trying to wipe lipstick off my face the last few days, and it's just, I burned myself. So my request / homework assignment is to dance inside of this notion that life is now. Whether you go out dancing or you just play music in your home by yourself, have a spontaneous dance moment. And if you don't like dancing around other people, you're a little bit afraid, close the blinds, even turn off the lights if you have to. Nobody's looking at you, and move and shake your body in ways that you just never really would allow yourself to. Have a spontaneous dance moment this week. And I think that's it, everybody. If you still want to purchase the VIP package, the Summit package for the Codependence package and the Trauma Healing package, which is 32 interviews total, plus a Trauma Healing Attunement session with me, the link is in the description of this video. Take on your life, because you deserve to live the life that you were designed to lead, beyond the way your trauma has programmed you to kind of set yourself aside and be in service of some other made-up hopeful vision. Happy healing and have a wonderful weekend. You are awesome. Bye. And one more thing about memory. I know I talked about trauma and memory and traumatic memory last week on Fridays with Fidelman. Oftentimes, if we are even remembering a traumatic event or a traumatic relationship, the memory will have us oftentimes, we'll have the memory and then we'll feel a certain way about the memory, and then we'll still be blaming that person. I'm trying to get out of this square of sunlight here. We'll blame our current reaction and the current feelings that we're having when we're recalling that memory on the person, our perpetrator that we're remembering. So it's time to start having feelings and emotions and start looking at how am I generating this feeling and emotion, rather than the other person, rather than the event or the memory of the person in that event. And that's not to say that when it comes to trauma, that person and that event is oftentimes trapped in ourselves, it's trapped in our nervous system, and it gets triggered. And that was oftentimes caused by another person or another event. And inside of healing, we want to manage the responsibility of these sensations that we're feeling when we remember. Because the more we don't manage the responsibility for that feeling and blame it on others, the less we actually feel it. And the goal is to feel. That's the goal. To actually become somebody who can handle and open to the feelings and sensations that we have. And even when it comes to heartbreak, my old friend Jerry used to always say, I hope that when your heart breaks, I hope it breaks open. Because there is no lack of surface area of the heart. So, all right, that's it. Love you guys. Bye. Another thought, I experience this a lot with my clients, not just with my clients, but people in general, friends, family. An emotion will come up, or a tear will come up, or they'll be moved and they'll cry, and then they'll go, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm crying. Like, I don't even know why I'm crying, And that is the drug being demonstrated right in front of me, which is, I'm feeling something, let me numb this out. Let me numb this out by smiling, by apologizing, by thinking it's inappropriate, by being embarrassed, no, I should not feel that. And I don't want to burden you by actually feeling what I'm actually feeling. And that also is a regressive traumatic response. It's like, I'm a child and you're my parent, and you actually cannot handle how I'm actually feeling. I'm afraid you can't handle it. I'm afraid I'm not safe to feel what I'm actually feeling. So I'm going to numb it out and pretend I don't feel that and act some other way and say that my feelings are like stupid or not something to be exposed or wrong. And that is demonstrated in adults. And I tell people all the time, why you're feeling something, right? Why should you not feel that? Why is that feeling automatically something weird, strange, to not be exposed? Let's look at that. Let's start answering that question. Let's look at bridging your feelings, bridging the gap between having them and feeling them. Maybe even starting with noticing them, noticing that you're having them. Because sometimes we don't even notice that we're feeling something. And we just talk on top of what we're feeling. And we're not even noticing, oh, I'm talking so much, or I'm disassociating, or whatever's happening cognitively is being driven by feelings that I'm having that I'm not even noticing that I'm having. And there's that disconnect between the feeling and the thinking. So yeah, just another thought about how we automatically set aside, numb out, push down our feelings with this drug of like, oh, no, I don't really actually feel that way. That's not really how I actually feel. No, I don't even know why that's coming up, which is a really good demonstration of what I've been talking about the whole video. Okay, bye again.